Thanks, folks, for tuning in to the channel here on Ken Michaels Radio. It's all about the Beatles, the group years, the solo years, the news, anything that comes to mind. We welcome back Luca Perasi, who has written a number of books. You know him best for the work he's done on Paul McCartney. In fact, this was his most recent book, Music is Ideas Volume 2, The Stories Behind the Songs. And actually, that's as far as Paul is concerned. Just want to make a quick mention. I know I said this in my podcast. We won't be talking about this on the show this time, but he also released these two books, The Beatles After the Beatles, Part 1, the narrative, Part 2, the discography. That was also recent from Luca. And he's stepping up there with Ken Womack with putting out the most Beatle books recently, but he has a new one out on Ringo, and this is what it looks like. I play the piano if it's in C, the stories behind the songs from 1970 to 1997. So, Luca, welcome back.
Ken, it's great to be back. And yes, I've been busy with these books. And well, today we will focus on Ringo's one. And well, I mean, there's lots to discover. There's always lots to discover and to discuss and to offer to readers. So I thought it was time to have you have mentioned the two books on the solo Beatles. It was time to have um, sort of a update about the solo careers in the 70s. And it was time also for having a reference book on Ringo Starr's career. You know,
Hmm.
uh, I have decided to split it in two parts. I thought it was better, and also for me, it's better to because it gave gives me the opportunity to delve it a little bit more into details, and it's beneficial, I think, to the reader because you don't have to read all at once a single volume of I don't know 500 pages and stuff. So this is definitely less scary for the readers.
Yeah, and one of the things I appreciate most about your books is that there's always information there that I never heard before. In particular, I just want to bring up because I noticed this on some of Ringo's albums. You will have listed in each track who the musicians are, whereas previously on some of their albums you just see a list of all the musicians on the album, but not specifying which songs they're on. So was that something? How did you get all that information?
I think in some cases there were information. Well, I can't really remember now, but uh, sometimes they put information, or they at the time they put information in a vinyl in a certain way. Then maybe in the CDs there were some more details.
Uh-huh.
There were information by the player themselves. And so I was able, in most cases, to split this information, or just they are listed very, very quickly. So you gotta understand if there's an asterisk, that means that these players are on. If there's an X or whatever, these other players are on. So I tried my best to offer the most accurate picture of the players who actually played on each track. Although it's a very sensible and important kind of thing. The credits in music, in pop music,
Hmm.
uh, have not always been fair uh, or accurate and stuff. So I'm trying to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, and I'm very grateful that you're doing that. I was just thinking specifically about Sentimental Journey because you don't see any musicians credits on that album. When you
Uh,
go back to something like that, you have a list of who the arrangers are for each song, but for example, I'm a Fool to Care. You say in your book, well, this was arranged by Klaus Voormann. you say that Klaus actually does play acoustic guitar on it and Billy Preston on piano. So I had never known
Yeah,
that before.
there was some additional information all over the years, and so when it was possible, it was also nice to add these little things. I think if you're a fan, if you like these details, you will find them enjoyable. But Groups of Blues was a bit difficult because there's lots of musicians, lots of guitars. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that all the players played in every song, but in some cases there were specific information. So it's always good to add a piece of information, even though you don't have the whole picture perfect. But in some cases you have little pieces, and you were able to verify. And it's good. It's good that you bring the subject on, because I like very much to work on this list of musicians, because these are the people who contributed to the music. you know, an important thing.
Yeah, I like to bring up the fact that since I mentioned Ken Womack, he put out a book on All Things Must Pass, and Layla, and there's a revised edition where you can see on each song on All Things Must Pass who the musicians are. Whereas when
Hmm.
the album first came out, it was just a list of all the musicians on the album, but not specifying each song. So
Yeah.
I'm enjoying whenever I discover anything like that here. Um, but going to the first album, Sentimental Journey, it says here, and I wasn't aware of this, that Ringo chose to work with Richard Perry because he liked his work on Tiny Tim's album.
Hmm.
So, I tend to think of Richard Perry before the Ringo album. He worked with Harry Nilsson, and that's how Richard Perry kind of came on board with the Ringo album. But I wasn't sure how everything started with Sentimental Journey and Richard Perry.
Yeah, there was a nice thing to discover also for me, and I think, as you mentioned at the beginning, if readers can discover uh, these little new things, I think this is an added value to a book, and not repeating all the same old stuff.
Mm,
So, you got to dedicate some time also to this aspect. It's a book obviously dedicated to the songs of Ringo, to the music. Then there's a big bit of background about how things came about, how people uh, met or got in touch. It's always it adds little nuances and stuff to the reading itself.
yeah, certainly with Tiny Tim, the Beatles must have liked him since they put him on their Christmas message in
Yeah.
'68. So I guess they must have liked the production on his album as well.
Hmm.
Do you know whose decision it was to have a different arranger for each song? I would guess that's George Martin.
Probably. I'm not sure about this. But anyway, I think it was a wise decision, because it gives the album a certain variety. Because the danger to me, when it comes to a genre kind of album,
Hmm.
is that you have the same style from track 1 to track 12. And if you have different arrangers, then the things really are really different. So
Hmm.
you can really hear the inputs of the arrangers. So yeah, probably George Martin uh, lent a hand in this decision. It was, I think, it was the mastermind behind everything, and he was uh, very good, not only at arranging and producing, but also in maybe putting in touch people, and he was well known by anyone. So if you if you are George Martin and pick up the phone, and ask someone to arrange a song for Ringo. Who can tell no?
It's a fascinating aspect of Sentimental Journey because not only did Ringo employ his friends like a Klaus Voormann or Morris Gibb, for that matter, to do arrangement, but George Martin called up Elmer Bernstein, so
Mm,
as for all of his film scores, someone like that. But it's just interesting all these people that got involved with Sentimental Journey. One song you had some information on that I found interesting. Love is a many splendored thing. You said Billy Preston plays the organ on it, and Ringo wanted to drum on the song, but he had trouble with a 4-bar thing. He went out to get something to eat, and while he was out, Quincy Jones called on Ronnie Verrell, a jazz drummer, to do the part. And when Ringo came back, he asked to hear the song again, and he said, "That didn't sound so bad."
yeah, yeah. That's these little anecdotes from the studio. I personally find them very enjoyable, and so when it's possible, I always try to yeah, to go to the source and add them, because it's a way to to bring these songs to life in a way, so you can put your favorite LP or CD and listen to the song and reading these anecdotes, and I think it's um, it's an enjoyable aspect for me as a writer, at least.
Hmm.
And I hope you enjoyed it, since you have bring it out. I think it hits the mark.
That's what makes it all worthwhile. If I learn one new thing in a Beatle book, it's worthwhile for me. So I learned plenty in this new book of yours. Your opinion, you said Stardust has one of Ringo's most successful performances on the record. Is that a favorite of yours? Because I think it's probably the standout track.
Yeah, uh, definitely. And well, let me add that, as I'm writing in the introduction of the book, uh, sometimes I assess Ringo's performance in terms of vocals,
Hmm.
also in terms of drumming, and don't take it too seriously. I mean, don't take it badly. Sometimes Ringo's not has not a perfect pitch, and I thought it was fair to note it. Or it was good also to say it's a great performance. Is not a criticism. I mean, we all know that Ringo is not a singer in the classic term, as McCartney is, for example,
Hmm.
or I don't know, Rod Stewart is a drummer, but he can sing. Uh, Sometimes the performance are not perfect, and I thought it was honest thing to say. Sometimes uh, it's not something that I wanted to be interpreted as uh, harsh criticism or stuff, or you know what I mean. So sometimes when it's not perfect, and since the book is about the music,
Hmm.
I think it's worth telling. Well, there's a couple of flat notes. I mean, let's have a laugh.
I don't know. For so many years, being so used to Ringo's voice, and when it's a little bit off, it doesn't bother me. Maybe because I'm just so
No, no,
we're
yeah,
used.
I see the point. It's not. It's a technical remark. That doesn't mean that it doesn't work. I mean, you could work with your voice even though the pitch is not perfect, and that's a fascinating thing with Ringo. So there are two different things. I can say, okay, there's a flat note. That doesn't mean, oh, okay, the performance is bad or the song is not enjoyable. Maybe it's enjoyable because of that flat note, you know?
Yeah, well, there's all different types of vocalists out there, and I kind of sometimes think of Ringo as a character voice, but there are plenty of times when he sings perfectly well, holds on to notes. He doesn't have the greatest range in the world, as we know,
Yeah.
but his voice suits the songs that he records in most cases. And I think he's very underrated actually as a singer. And sometimes when I look back, I just saw a performance of him doing Act Naturally with the Beatles live. His voice was strong. You know, it's just that you're so
And he
used.
was drumming, and he was drumming at the same time. It's not easy
Right.
at all.
I
Yeah,
know.
sure.
So there's a lot of people out there in the music industry that have, I say character voices, but they're good singers, but they put their personality into it, they put their charisma into it, and that's all part of the package of their vocals. And there's a style that Ringo has that's his own, that he makes his own.
Hmm.
So there you go. Bukusa Blues. You say that Apple put out a press release that a second album from the sessions would be,
Hmm.
um, it never came out, obviously, but it would indicate more material had been recorded. So I never knew about that.
Yeah, definitely more material have been recorded than no one knows what happened, and probably the fact that they recorded more material is due or linked to the fact that we all know that sessions in Nashville are very productive, and
Hmm.
so they just recorded and recorded and recorded tracks. So at some point, maybe the number of tracks they recorded made someone think about a second album or a you know follow up, and it was not so successful in commercial terms. Bokups Blues,
Hmm.
which is a fine album. I mean, I like it very much. It's a very enjoyable album, but it was not so successful, and maybe Ringo wanted to do other things, and then he did another country album recently,
Yes, it
right?
did. You don't mean this one, Luca.
Yes, this one.
It is right by my side. Look up. Go check it out, folks. Um,
Nice one.
I love it. I love the production. The songs are strong. I love the collaborations with people like Billy Strings. A lot of good stuff on there.
They nailed it, definitely.
Hmm. It don't come easy. You said that the earliest recordings of the song that had Stephen Stills on it were destroyed.
Yeah, that's something Ken Scott has said,
Okay.
and you know, uh, they just laid down a version, and then they were in need of some of the tapes, and someone decided, okay, it's a bad version, then we can we can erase the old one and
Hmm.
record on it. For us, fans and historians or whatever, it's always bad to know that a version has been erased or destroyed or whatever, because we wanted to maybe to listen to everything that is possible. But I see the point. I mean, recording studios are, um, um, business. It's business,
Yeah.
and so you got a tape that you can reuse. You reuse it. It's lot of money, and so probably they just lay down the wrong version and say, okay, let's erase it. Who cares
Hmm.
about keeping it? Which is a shame anyway.
Nowadays, you want to know the history of all this stuff in the earliest versions and see an evolution, and that would fit very well on a box set, with Ringo.
Yeah, but it's the same thing that happened, I think, like with the TVs. Like, sometimes they say, "Oh, the BBC destroyed the tapes of this and that." I mean, and we're talking about the BBC,
Yeah,
and you say, "Why?" Abbey Road. Why did you erase it? I mean, but it's business after all.
they didn't have the foresight to know that
Oh
this was
yeah,
just years later. Also, Ringo's song Blind Man. Didn't know that Pete Ham played on it. Acoustic and electric guitar. Every now and then you learn a little bit more about members of Badfinger, like on the Living in the Material World box set, that they were on a few cuts there. So I wasn't aware that he played on Blind Man.
Yeah, that apparently it is. I mean, I don't have uh, the track sheet, but I think this information appeared way back on Eight Times to Hold You. And so kudos also to the authors of that great book for providing lots of info about the solo careers.
It's a Bible. It is.
Yeah, definitely.
It's been used that way for me for so much of my work. Um, just something I wanted to talk about here since we mentioned Sentimental Journey and Bukus of Blues. There are these times when Ringo chooses not to drum on his albums, and certainly that was the case with those two albums. And then I learned later on, then because you do have a chapter in there on the Chips Moman sessions, which never came out, and Ringo didn't drum there. I kind of wonder what the appeal is for someone who has certainly gone out saying he's the greatest drummer in rock, and then he doesn't seem to want to drum on many of his songs.
Well, I think probably this is due to the fact that both albums are um, very special albums in terms of music or genres of music. So mm, I don't know. He came to Nashville and uh, to do a special project, for example. And so maybe he was a bit intimidated, or he didn't know the songs in advance. He came into the studio without knowing the song, so it would have taken um, much more time probably to record the album if you have to also to drum uh, on them. Well, Sentimental Journey is a different kind of thing, so probably it was a wise decision not to have him drumming and having this session man or ensembles that were accustomed and knew very well all those standards. And so uh, I think it was anyway uh, a good decision in the end to
Yeah.
focus for him to focus on the vocals. Yeah,
Yeah, I was
I
just
think so.
curious about that, but you raise a good point about you'd have to learn the song from start with
Mm.
Bukus of Blues, that kind of thing. So, yeah. And also for expediency, you know,
Yeah.
all these trained musicians who on Sentimental Journey, they can get through it a lot quicker that way. Um, Not too much I can say about the Ringo album because we all love it. We know what a classic it was, but your personal opinion, aside from the fact that the other Beatles helped him on it, it seemed to be the right combination of all the different musicians. And, the other songs on there that didn't have the other Beatles are really strong, like Oh My and Have You Seen My Baby you know, and having Richard Perry there. So,
Mhm.
what do you think accounts most of all for the success of the Ringo album? I mean, I know a lot of attention was drawn to the fact that all four Beatles are on it. But apart from that, is there more you can say about it?
Well, it is difficult because when it comes to sort of reunion of the Beatles in the first half of the 70s, the hype was so great
Hmm.
that you cannot really separate the hype from the quality of the album itself. Then, if you want to analyze the songs one by one, they are all great songs, and generally speaking, the atmosphere of the album is the key ingredient for his success, in my opinion. The songs are great, but it's such an enjoyable album, such feisty album, you know, very upbeat, and that's the thing. But probably without the participation of John. Paul and Ring and George, sorry,
Hmm.
who knows? It's it's a it's a valid album from start to finish. I mean, let's pretend that that the songs that were written by the three were written by other people. I mean,
Hmm.
there are great songs anyway,
Yeah,
and well, it's a kind of a silly exercise that we're doing, but it's a very strong album. Uh, what would have happened without the hype? Hard to know, but I think everybody was aware that Ringo needed this kind of push, and for many reasons. They offered the right songs for him, and was the right moment for pushing Ringo's career with such a strong material. And he also provided some co-writing in the album.
sure.
So uh, it's a combination that you cannot decide which element is the key one. But when you mix all these ingredients and you have an album like Ringo,
Hmm.
it's I mean it's impossible not to be a success with that material, with that atmosphere and the cover. Everything was perfect. I mean, they just planned the album from start to finish in the best way.
Yeah, and Klaus Forman's artwork was incredible. The booklet that came with it, the
Oh
front.
yeah.
How much credit do you give to Richard Perry for bringing this album to make it the success that it was?
Uh, fundamental. It was key. Uh, you got to have a strong producer that really knows what to do with the material, who knows how to sequence the songs.
Hmm.
This is a very important aspect in my opinion. It's very important to sequence an album with the right spots for the right songs. I mean, there are songs which are perfect as openers. There are songs that are perfect as an ending. But at least this is what we can say now that uh, we are Beatle fans, and so this aspect for the Beatles um, was always important, considered as important. The White Album starts with "Back in the USSR."
Hmm.
I mean, it's a perfect opener, and
Right.
they just spend time also thinking about which is the best opener we can choose. So the Ringo album is a perfect example of this technique of sequencing the tracks. I mean, and a producer also has to contribute all of these aspects. So definitely, Richard Perry was the perfect producer for Ringo in that uh, in that moment of his career.
I definitely agree. And to start with I'm the Greatest, to end with You and Me, Babe, which sounds like a song that Ringo would sing in a club as he's about to leave, like the
Oh
last song
yeah.
of the night, was just perfect for the song. But yeah, Richard Perry turned out to be the ideal producer at that time. Moving on with him,
Hmm.
it does say here that for Goodnight Vienna, the song Husbands and Wives, it was Richard Perry's idea for Ringo to record that song. And Perry said at one point he attempted to cut it with Harry Nilsson. And so, again, Husbands and Wives, Roger Miller tune, Ringo goes back to country music. And there's always a little bit of country scattered on his albums anyway. I mean,
Hmm.
Life for Me has a, you know, hillbilly hoedown feel to it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting to know that Richard Perry brought that song to the album. And also, I found it really interesting that it was Richard Perry who chose the No No song for Ringo. I always wanted to know how that song came to Ringo. But as it turns out, the person who wrote it, Hoyt Axton, famous songwriter who's also a famous actor, um, it was written by him, and it was recorded at the last minute for the album. And Ringo originally didn't want to do it.
Yeah, apparently he was not convinced about it.
You know,
Probably because of the lyrics, because I mean, they are quite straight, but can if someone wants to see the opposite of the meaning of the song, they can do it. So
right.
probably, yeah, that was the reason why.
Do you know what the problem was with, when it first came out, you just heard the No No song, and then it became Skokian.
Hmm.
No No song and Skokian. So what part of the song is that for people that aren't familiar? Because now when you look at the song credits, the title is says No No song slash Skokian.
Yeah, there was a credit issue, about it, and they have to credit the other authors because of that. And that's one of I'm always surprised when I discover this kind of things, because uh, music is a very important business, especially in the 70s. A market like US, we're talking about millions of records sold.
Hmm.
And then there's there's an album by Ringo Starr, so very important personality and stuff. And then you get an issue with the copyrights and the credits and stuff, you know. So it's always surprising to see that even in a million seller, an album like Goodnight Vienna, you can have you can have an issue like that, and the song itself was very successful. So I mean, uh, someone can knock on your door and say, "Well, okay, what are you doing? What are you doing with my credits? I want
Right.
to be credited."
Okay. Now one thing I've always been curious about, there may be a very simple explanation behind it. When Ringo switched labels, he decided to not use Richard Perry for Ringo's Rotogravure and Arif Martin. Usually in this industry, there's that old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If everything's working for you with this producer, why would he decide at that moment to go with a different producer? Or was that something that he was forced to do because of the record company?
It could be. I think so. I think so. Now we got to go back, and maybe Perry was maybe they parted ways because they thought, well, we've made two successful albums like Ringo and Goodnight Vienna, and they didn't want to make the third, but probably it was linked to contractual reasons. I think so. You as a label, you bring on your label Ringo, and then you have some personnel that you are using that is working for your label, and Arif Mardin was not the last choice. I mean, it was a great producer as well.
Oh.
So they said, okay, we got this producer. Can you work with Arif Mardin? And if I was in Ringo's shoes, I would have said, yes, sure. I mean, and it was an incredible contract for Ringo in financial terms.
Hmm.
So I think why you have to spoil um, the contract, saying, "Oh no, I wanna work with my producer. I wanna work again with Richard Perry." You know, you don't do it, and then we all know what happened. But I don't think it was um, a bad move. Just for a change, having a different producer. And I think that Ringo's Autogravure is not a bad album. I mean, there are some very good songs on it. And so, yeah, I think Ringo accepted a nice contract and a nice offer also in terms of who was the producer.
Well, I've always said in my shows that it's the material that matters first before anything else, more than the production. And I
Sure.
strongly believe that anyway. But yet, you also know in so many cases, how different would the Beatles have been without George Martin? You know, or in the case of Ringo, would the Ringo album have been as successful or Goodnight Vienna without Richard Perry? So there's always that question that lingers, I think. But did you personally see a steep decline in the quality of the music that from the next few albums? Because obviously the sales got worse and worse.
Well, yeah, definitely Ringo. After I think that the rotogravure has got some limits. Not all the songs, at least to my tastes, are on the level of Ringo and Goodnight Vienna, but it's still a good album. Um, uh, then things definitely changed, and it was then if you are out of a big contract, then obviously you got to find other authors for your songs, and we all know that Ringo collaborated with Vini Poncia
Yes.
quite a lot, which is a great songwriter. But to vary a bit the offer, Ringo needed other songwriters. So if uh, John Paul and John Paul and George were not available, then you got to lean on other songwriters. And then if you're not successful, these other songwriters maybe don't show up, and you struggle to find some good songs. Maybe you had to accept what's available, and then the record company pushes you because at the time you got to go out with a record a year, and so all this pressure, and then you go out with another album and it's not successful, and then you do the following one and the same problems. So it's like a spiral.
Hmm.
So once you are in this spiral, it's very hard to get out. And we all know, I mean, I don't want to bring out this aspect mm, as one of the main topics of discussion, but we all know that Ringo had a incredible, huge problem with alcohol
Hmm.
at the time. And so you put all these things together, pressure, you're not selling, you're indulging in substances and stuff. Material is not that great, and that's what happened with Ringo in the second half of the 70s,
Mm.
unfortunately.
Thing is, the way that I look at it, Ringo's Rotogravure, Ringo the Fourth, and Bad Boy all have a lot of strong material on it. I'm not saying every song is, and I especially like the songwriting with Vinnie Poncia, which really came to fruition with Ringo the Fourth,
Hmm.
which I'll talk to you about in just a second. So one thing about A Dose of Rock and Roll, you said the guitar solo is actually a combination of Peter Frampton and Jesse Davis. I know Peter Frampton was asked this question a few years ago, and he couldn't remember the sessions. So where did you find out about the two of them doing?
Uh, Now you're asking something that I can't remember, because when you stockpile
Yeah.
all these sources, I have to look in the book and think about it. But let me just take a quick look. Maybe if I can remember it now.
Because in my mind, it sounds so much like Peter Frampton. That guitar solo has his style to it. So, but Ringo's Rotogravure has a lot of really strong material on there, especially the song that Paul wrote, Pure Gold. I know a lot of
Oh
people.
yeah, I mean there's there's lots of good songs, but even those of rock and roll. I mean, it's a strong opener. It's a
Hmm.
very strong opener.
And I was
See.
surprised that it didn't do as well as I felt it should have.
Well, this is it's not listed here. I got to think about it, and maybe I'll drop a line about this thing. But I'm sure I didn't made up. I didn't make up.
Okay, no, I believe. Um, this I found very interesting. I don't know if this is your observation here, but you
Hmm.
said the lack of success of Ringo's Rotogravure led Atlanta to cut their budget for Ringo the Fourth, which may explain why Ringo was forced to co-write more than half the album with Vinnie Poncia. Because I was always under the impression that Ringo just wanted to get more involved with songwriting, and he got
Hmm.
along well with Vinnie. So six of the
Sure.
10 songs on there on that album were co-writes.
Hmm. Yeah, but I don't think Ringo had any ambition of co-writing more, even though uh, you can benefit from royalties if
Hmm.
you are a writer. But I think that if you need some good material, you need songwriters, and songwriters have to be paid. So I don't think because of his situation at the time. So you know, mm, good life, uh, lots of uh, drinks, and I don't think he was in a situation or a period where he wanted to keep busy with songwriting. And he knew that Vini Poncia could contribute uh, some of to some of his ideas very well.
Hmm.
So, but I think it was a budget kind of thing. Okay, uh, we cannot give you um, our roster of songwriters and spend lots of money on the next album because the first was not successful. And so I I always think also in terms of business when it comes to uh, these things. These are this music is an art, but it's linked to a business. There's no denying it.
Hmm.
So, and the mechanism we all know how it works. It's not uh, it's not something that you can ask for a second chance. You know what I mean? So Ringo's Autogravure was not successful in terms of sales, and so they gotta do something because I think they were quite aware that they had spent lots of money in the contract and they were not going to be repaid. So what happens with the executives is that they always try, you know, to find a way to spend less, and then after that, Ringo was out. That's what happened.
Well, I'd certainly like to learn a lot more about the Ringo Vinnie Poncia collaboration there because I think they got along fine. And,
Sure.
you even say that Gave It All Up, which is one of my favorite Ringo songs in his solo career, is, what do you say here? One of the best results of the songwriting team.
No,
And,
definitely.
I think Wings was a good song. Simple Love Song was a good song. Gypsies in Flight, a lot of
Oh, no,
good
I
songs.
I'm with you. I'm with you in thinking that the songwriting partnership was fantastic. But I mean, so uh, unfortunately, this record didn't sell enough,
Hmm,
and so now we're talking about it after almost 50 years.
right.
Anyway, it's interesting because I have entitled the book Ringo Starr, I play the piano if it's in C, which is you know is a joke. I mean, we all know that it's a verse from early 70s song. 1970 song. And it also means that Ringo is not a full-time composer. But if we consider the material that is in this book, 1970, 1997, there are more than 40 songs written or co-written by Ringo.
Hmm.
So I think it did some nice efforts to come up with good songs. And so it's an interesting aspect of his personality. It's not
Yeah.
that easy to, you know, put your hands on a piano or a guitar, and he tried to improve his technique, but at some point he said, "No, I don't want to be a songwriter. I don't want to be a songwriter, or I can't be a songwriter." He tried, but there are some good results.
Oh, I think there's a lot of good results.
Oh yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, he's not a songwriter. He's not a songwriter, so we got to consider this. It's not easy to invent yourself if you're a drummer, uh, also as a songwriter, even part-time songwriter. So you got to find someone who helps you, maybe with harmonic structures, maybe with lyrics and stuff. And so there's quite a lot of songs that he has written or co-written
Hmm.
during this period, and this is interesting.
Well, it's one of the most fascinating aspects to me of his career that we just don't know enough about. And I know that this book only goes up to 1997, but certainly since then, he's co-written with just about every song on his albums as a co-write. You know,
Hmm.
whether it's the Mark Hudson period with the Roundheads and all the various people post Mark Hudson, um, not counting Look Up, the country album, because he only co-wrote one song on there. But he's done quite a lot of songwriting, but in each song it could be a different level of participation. So you
Hmm.
just don't know. But I think that he was developing an interest in the 70s, especially, and co-writing songs with George Harrison in the beginning and then later with Vinnie Poncia. It really, blossomed, I think, with Vinnie. And then from there with people like Joe Walsh and then to Mark Hudson and various people.
Hmm.
I would never say he's not a songwriter. He certainly has contributed to a lot of songs, but you can't put him in the same category as John, Paul, and George. But he's still done quite a lot as a songwriter.
Oh yeah, I mean, as you were saying, we don't know how this collaboration worked, and that would be nice to know more.
Yeah.
Who did what, who provided lyrics, who provided the music, how they worked on the ideas. That's always fascinating, but so far there's little.
Okay. Um, let's talk about Scouts the Mouse. You said it's an important addition to Ringo's canon. Why do you feel that's so?
Well, because the songs are catchy, very well built, perfect for Ringo, and when Ringo is put in his in this kind of situation with the right material, it's perfect. I
Hmm.
mean, and this is the perfect material for Ringo. And anyway, it's not an album attributed to Ringo Starr, but uh, there are 8 songs sung by him. So I thought it was needed to have a chapter dedicated to Scouse and Mouse, although maybe also other details are not that um, available, like the specific musicians and stuff. But anyway, it was good also to re-listen to the songs and describe a bit these songs that are rare to find.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's a story, and Ringo interprets the story very well. He sings it well. Songs are catchy as I told you. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot listening to the tracks.
Yeah, it seems like whenever he's singing a song for children primarily.
Yeah,
Voice is just so suitable for that.
yeah, definitely. That's the other thing. It's a song for children, and Ringo is the man.
Right. From Yellow Submarine on.
Yeah.
Now you
Well, it's a specific genre of music. I mean, we all know that even Paul loves to do children music, and it's a specific target. It's not easy to do songs for children, and it's a serious thing.
oh, I agree with you. And Paul was spot on with We All Stand Together and Tropic Island Hum and those songs. So, yeah.
You didn't mention Mary Had a Little Lamb, Ken.
All right. I'm not going to mention everyone.
Uh, joking.
Um, Now it says here an animated TV special of the story of Scouse the Mouse was planned for airing on ITV, but it was shelved due to a strike. Do you know
Mm.
if there was one made that we just have never seen?
I don't know. I don't know anything more than what I wrote here. But it was anyway, an interesting piece, and so I just decided to add it. But I cannot go into more details. Otherwise, I would have put them in the book.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that would be interesting if there was one made, if that ever came.
hmm
Moving on a little bit to Stop and Smell the Roses. You said that was not the result of a coherent project, but rather a hodgepodge of songs.
That's what I feel. It's not a bad album, but I think in spots it's a little bit. I don't know. It's not. It's not a. I think it lacks cohesion, and I don't like the remake of Back of Boogaloo at the end. Seems to me a bit forced in spots. Although George George's song is a great song,
Right.
and the two McCartney songs are really fantastic. So these three songs are top level, and others I'm not convinced. When you go into the multi producer formula, uh, it's always uh, it's always difficult to have certain cohesion in the result. It's not a bad album. I mean, it's very um, upbeat, it's very catchy, but to me, could have been could have been better. Could have been better. And don't have to forget all the issues that Ringo went through again with the labels and with the various um, versions of the album that he offered and were rejected. Lots of things went on, and he was unfortunately at the peak of his let me say the peak of his alcohol abuse at the time. So in spots, the album also suffers from some unconvincing vocal parts to my ears.
Thinking like strictly a businessman here, despite his sales dipping since Ringo's Rotogravure on, um, after John Lennon was murdered, don't you think there would have been more of an interest in what the other three had to say? I mean, Ringo struggled to get a record deal. Warner Brothers turned down four songs from somewhere in England, you know. So George and Ringo were having their struggles. Don't you find it rather odd, just from the business point of view, that Ringo would? I understand the record sales, were poor from Ringo's Rotogravure on, but the fact that, there'd be a little bit more attention given to what Paul, George, and Ringo had to say after that.
I think the early 80s, well, the beginning of the 80s were really challenging. Also for Paul, we have to remember, for example, well, we talk about McCartney. So he's a most successful songwriter of all times.
Hmm.
And when they offered Tug of War as a double album, they said no. So even Paul has got his rejection, and it was 80, 82, 81, 80, 80, late 81. They
Hmm.
said, okay, it's a double album. They said, no, thanks. Okay, so you got Ringo was rejected, George was rejected, Paul was rejected.
Hmm.
So to some extent, there's also another aspect, maybe. I was not there. I mean, I was 10 years old, 11, when John Lennon was murdered. So I
Yeah.
can vaguely remember the news on the TV. But speaking in terms of business, then someone could say, okay, now the Beatles are really the past. So who is really interested in this out of three artists, out of three ex-Beatles?
Hmm.
No one. And that's what they thought at some point. And things are changing rapidly, and the 80s were you know a very different era. So at the beginning, I think there was this kind of sentiment towards them. It's possible. I was not there, Ken, so I'm just guessing because I'm younger than you. But it's possible that when you are in a business, someone is always looking for something new to offer to the younger generation. And
Right.
then they were they were in the 40s. Um, and so someone has said, okay, the Beatles are done. Now the Beatles are really done. Then things, uh, over the following decades changed this perception quite a lot. Or they can say, okay, the Beatles can be something, but it's a nostalgic kind of thing. So let's put out a compilation. Let's put out old material because a nostalgic kind of thing is perfect when someone dies, you
Right.
know?
Which could explain why we had real music in the early 80s and 20 greatest hits
Yeah.
compilations. I often say that it was more like the middle of the 80s I sensed a lull in interest in the
Mm, mm.
even
Yeah,
though
probably that was the beginning.
yeah.
That was the beginning, and then in the mid 80s, even McCartney was really at his lowest point in terms of commercial success.
Hmm.
Definitely. We'll talk about it hmm, in the near future.
Yeah. Let me just we won't be able to get to everything that I want to because I know that your time is somewhat limited here. But maybe we'll save time takes time for later. But Old Wave, you seem to think is one of his strongest releases. Why so?
Yes, yes. I mean, it's a nice album, and Joe Walsh did a great job, and the songs are great, and I think Ringo is singing well, and there's the all the ingredients for for a successful album. Unfortunately, it was released only in small markets or not in the two main markets. And so, also in this case, it's another part of Ringo's discography that was worth exploring. It was worth having it in the book. And I think everyone should have a listen to Old Wave because I think it's one of his finest works. I
I
like
think
it very
Ringo and
much.
Joe Walsh work together perfectly.
Yeah,
There's something about the two of them, and even later on, past Old Wave.
yeah,
There's songs like Fill in the Blanks that they wrote together. It just seems like their styles mesh together very well. And his guitar playing goes so well with Ringo's drumming. So, yeah, I really,
yeah.
yeah.
Nice, 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 nice album, nice concept, nice flow of songs. I think it was a very well done.
Hmm. Did you like the version of She's About a Mover? Because that was very different, having all that brass and everything. And what I found really interesting, because this is also in the credits there about um, Joe Walsh seeing this band called the Rock and Roll Hollywood Review.
Hmm.
Did a session with them, and Walsh actually played a benefit concert with them. And
Hmm.
after that, they went into the studio, laid down all the tracks for She's About to Move It without Ringo, and Ringo just
Yeah,
did the vocal. Again, doesn't play drums on it.
doesn't play drums. No, I mean, my favorite songs are others. I think "In My Car" is a very nice song. There's a "Picture Show Life."
Right.
It's a great song. So I mean, in the end, it's not a bad album at all. I mean, it could have been could have been a successful album if not for the label issues and stuff. It's a nice addition to Ringo's canon.
Yeah. I think Hopeless sounds a lot like Oh My My.
Mm, yeah, a bit. Yeah, you're right.
And As Far As We Can Go is a great ballad and written by Russ Ballard. And they did a few other songs together. Because weren't they
Hmm.
going to work on an album together, Ringo and Russ Ballard?
They were working on an album. Then I think Ballard has some sort of personal issues, and he got to leave the sessions and stuff. So they just recorded 3 or 4 songs.
Right.
They are anyway documented in the book from what we know about them. And anyway, I also tried to include in the book also some unreleased stuff, uh, so
Yes.
you can have you know, the best picture of what happened in Ringo's music during those uh, those decades.
Okay. So, just want to wrap things up with a few very quick questions. When is part two coming up?
Oh, 2026, um, I think later in the year.
Okay.
That's the plan at the moment. If something else doesn't pop up, but that's the plan. I mean, I want to follow up um, quickly if it's possible, because then it depends. It depends very much, Ken, in this project how many people you want to interview are interested, how many people reply quickly, how much material or information uh, uh, pops up. It depends from many factors, but at the moment, it's planned for next year.
Okay. And why did you choose to not cover Ringo's films? Why did you just stick to the audio? Just curious.
No, I mean it's no. I want to focus on music. My main um, goal is the music, and I have built this series, uh, uh, which is a series of McCartney's music, his ideas, focusing uh, exclusively on the music and on the songs. I know there's lots of aspects to take in consideration, but it's not my goal. These books got to be reference books about songs, and then there's a hint to personal life when it's important and when it helps the reader to understand better. But they are dedicated to music. That's what I want to do.
Okay. Fair enough. Finally, the most exciting news that I've heard. You know what's coming here?
Yeah,
Writing a
I
book
know.
on Press to Play.
Yeah, but it's finished. I mean, it will be out if not next week, in the second week of June, because it's finished and we are just waiting for a print copy and to look at it and see if everything is fine. But it's finished and I'm very happy with it. I was able to interview you, Pagem, um, for the first time. I was able to interview again Carlos Alomar. Then I went back to some of my old interviews and extended them a bit So is Jerry Marotta is in as well. Uh, I collected some of the people that were involved, maybe in the videos, like bass player Neil Jason. Um, there's um, Preston Heyman, percussion player and drummer that was
Okay.
involved in the Only Love Remains video. So there's lots of people involved in the sessions and in the period, and I was able to build a very interesting book with some kind of deep technical aspects as well. But I think you will enjoy it, and many people will enjoy this book that is called Press to Play, That Unmistakable 80s Sound. That is the title I have chosen for the book, and yeah, very excited about it. I mean, it was very nice to cover this couple of years of Paul's career and life. I mean, the period 85, 86 was not easy for Paul. Personal things, the Live Aid
Hmm.
performance, Michael Jackson buying Northern Songs catalog,
Yeah.
you know, Press to Play that was not so successful. He was searching for another songwriting partnership. There was he was not at the best of his confidence in this period, and that makes a fascinating insight um, that I offer in the book, also on Paul's uh, personality and you know communication style also that he showed um, while promoting the album. I have dedicated a chapter to
Hmm.
this aspect. We all know that McCartney is really one of the smartest people in the world when it comes to promoting a product. When it came to Press to Play, he was so insecure that I thought it was worth analyzing his communication during their promotion and offering some insights into his psychology and personality.
Okay. Eric Stewart, did you get to talk to him at all?
Now, Eric Stewart it was not interviewed, but there are lots of insight from him, taken from old interviews and not so well-known things. So it's well represented as well in the book because he was a key collaborator. And so, although I didn't interview him, there's lots of quotes from Eric Stewart as well.
Okay. Well, as soon as the book's out, you're coming back here.
I will, I will, Ken, and let's stay in touch. And as I told you, it will be out quite soon. So you following me on my channel, so it will be announced very soon.
Okay. We're going to pick up the next time that we talk about Ringo on Chips Moment, Time
Yeah.
Takes Time,
Oh yeah.
whatever else. So we didn't have enough time to get to all of it, but thank you again, Luca, for being such a tremendous guest here on the channel. And good luck with
Thanks
the
to you.
Ringo book.
Thanks to you.
And we'll see you soon. And thanks to all of you for watching. Thanks to all the new subscribers. They're all tuning in to watch you, Luca. Anyway, so thanks to all of you for watching and for your support of the channel, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.